Welcome to U.S. News Source Channel. Tensions have risen on the territory of Belarus. Ukrainian warplanes spotted near Belarus border. Air attack sirens activated. Tension between the countries is reaching the line phase. Strong explosion sounds took place on the territory of Crimea. It has been reported that Russian air defense systems have been activated. After the powerful explosions that took place at night in Sevastopol, the heart of Crimea, fire was opened. Mutual attacks on the southern front are expanding their scope. In the Ukraine-Russia war, relations between countries are starting to determine the course of the war. Aid to Ukraine started to increase. This time, France is transferring important military equipment for Ukraine. War has now started to take shape with the steps taken on the fronts and the decisions made. Violence of the operations is increasing from both sides. While tensions between countries are rising, the war is now moving towards new events with each step taken. Ukrainian army gains significant advantages with its successful operations on the fronts. Moreover, thanks to the important military support from the countries, significant advantages are provided on many fronts. At the same time, as Russia has been dealing with inadequacies in operations in recent days, it has started to turn to Belarusian territory for new preparations. Having expressed its support for Russia since the beginning of the war, Belarus has started a joint military preparation since the talks with the Russian leader. Armies of the two countries are making various preparations on the Ukrainian borders, and Russia has recently sent many of its military resources to the Belarusian border. At this border, tensions between countries began to increase. It was even reported that the Ukrainian army started to build a precautionary wall on the Belarusian border. This time, it was reported that Ukrainian planes were seen near the Belarusian border. According to the statements, Ukraine's MiG-29 and Su-27 warplanes were seen at a distance of about 50 kilometers from Belarus. Considering that the Ukrainian planes have not been flying near the Belarusian border for about a few months, it is curious that such a move has now been made. Ukrainian Military Command, on the other hand, confirmed that the Ukrainian Air Force was flying over the Kiev region, but did not give any other details. It is thought that the reason for this may be due to the air alarm activated on the territory of Ukraine due to the flight of MiG-31 warplanes over Belarusian territory. It is estimated that these warplanes are armed with American AGM-88 HARM cruise missiles. After all these events, air raid sirens sounded in the skies of Belarus. According to breaking news, air raid alarms have been activated in the southern part of Belarus. With the threat of air and missile attacks in the L0ST region of Belarus, these airstrike alarms began to sound. Belarus has not yet made an official statement on this issue. Operation of the air and missile warning system was recorded in the video footage taken from this L0ST region of Belarus. Sound of the air raid siren caused panic in the region, including the Russian soldiers. Although these explosions remain a mystery, it is known that Ukraine will retaliate in a possible attack. To remind you, many countries have taken action in recent days due to the fact that Russia and Belarus have started various preparations. Ukraine, which increased its measures, stated that it would be retaliated in a possible attack. It is known that such attacks will expand the scope. As it is known, the inclusion of another country in the war will expand the scope of the war. This may lead to the intervention of supporting countries. It is known that Russia has very few countries that support it. For these reasons, if the scope of the war expands, the war on behalf of Russia will become more difficult. This will cause the losses to reach an even more irrecoverable point. Because it is known that Ukraine continues to receive significant support from many countries such as NATO. If Russia includes Belarus in the war, many countries that support Ukraine may also step in. It is known that several NATO countries have already increased the precaution at the borders, as Russia and Belarus have started joint military preparations. According to estimates, if this situation continues in this way, tensions between countries will increase. Moreover, mutual attacks on many fronts have increased. Explosions were also reported in the territory of Crimea. After the sighting of unmanned aerial vehicles in the Sevastopol region of Crimea, Russian air defense systems deployed in the region were activated. Afterwards, it was stated that the target was opened fire. Although the Russian Defense Ministry or regional authorities have not made a statement, it is thought that Russian military points were targeted in these attack attempts. At the same time, it was reported that 2 strong explosion sounds were heard in this attack that took place on the territory of Crimea. Moreover, it was claimed that the Ukrainian army launched an attack on this region at night. After the violent explosions in the region, it was claimed that the Russian air defense system shot down this unmanned aerial vehicle on the North Pier. It was also stated that these drones were filled with explosives and were quite large. As it is known, in such unmanned aerial vehicle attacks, various and powerful ammunition is added to these military equipment. Thanks to the added ammunition such as explosives, greater damage can be done in attacks. At the same time, it is known that air and sea attacks have been carried out in this Sevastopol territory before. In these attacks, which were allegedly carried out by the Ukrainian army, the Russian Navy and its base were targeted. Even many Russian ships and equipment were seriously damaged. On top of all this, the tension started to rise even more. As stated earlier by Ukraine, the retake of Crimea may be aimed at ending the war. In order to achieve this, operations on the southern front are increasing day by day. These operations, on the other hand, increase the tension between the countries and prove the importance of the southern front. Because after the Russian army, which suffered serious losses in the past weeks, Moscow had decided to withdraw from the Kherson region in the south. However, when the attacks from this region, which borders with Crimea, were increased, Russia, afraid of losing Crimea, started its efforts to attack this region again. It is estimated that operations on the southern front will also be increased until the final situation of Crimea is finalized. Moreover, it is known that it has become more difficult for Russia to achieve success in all its operations during the course of the war. While the Russian army, which made various strategic mistakes, had difficulty even to compensate for its losses, it is even more difficult to achieve success in important areas. In addition, on the contrary, on the Ukrainian side, the aid received day by day started to increase more and more. Ukraine, which receives various supports from many countries, is getting support from France this time. According to the statements, France has started shipping the first batch of 6 AMX-10 RC tanks. It has even been reported that these incoming tanks have reached the border of Ukraine and Poland. Ukrainian An-124 military transport aircraft, with 6 French tanks, made its first flight in the Rzeszów region of Poland. It is expected that these tanks will be placed on the border first, and then they will begin to cross into the territory of Ukraine. In addition, according to what is known, 18 of these tanks, which will be sent 3 times, will be sent. It was also reported that these French light tanks have important characteristics and have much higher maneuverability compared to conventional tanks. Any such military equipment provides serious advantages for the Ukrainian army. This can largely determine the course of the war. Because of these, Russia is not at all satisfied with these developments. However, in the long run, he will not be even more satisfied and will have difficulties. Because while the Ukrainian army is increasing its military resources with new and powerful weapons, the Russian army has to face its decreasing military resources. In the following days of the war, all these developments affect the fate of both the armies and countries on the fronts. For this, all kinds of decisions taken by countries and all kinds of steps taken on the fronts are of much greater importance. Now, it has become imperative that each move be carried out in line with a much more strategic goal. We'll see what happens in the next few days. We have reached the end of another video. You can support us by liking the video. You can easily follow new videos by subscribing. I wish you all a war-free day. See you.